we've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community.
Woo. Welcome, guys. It's another DevFest Ghana 2021 this time around, and it's still virtual. Sorry, maybe you were expecting something physical, but unfortunately, we couldn't go physical this year. But we promise you next year is going to be physical. But before I introduce myself, I would like to inform you DevFest Ghana is organized by GDG Accra and GDG Kumasi. I would like to introduce the crew on GDG Accra, and to start with, I have Samira. Samira is WTM ambassador for GDG Accra or Accra as well, and then she has been with us all this while, right from 2020 when we had the GDG, we had the DevFest Ghana 2020 thereabout. We are all planning to have the first one is Deborah for GDG Accra. So Deborah and Mike, who are all co-organizers for GDG Accra, and myself, I'm Shadrach, and I'm the GDG Accra organizer. Let's move to GDG Kumasi. GDG Kumasi, we have Frank. Hi, Frank. So Frank is here from GDG Kumasi. Frank Hi. Is the GDG Kumasi organizer. And then Frank also has with him Charity. Charity is the WTM lead for Kumasi, or WTM ambassador for Kumasi, if I'm right. Then they also have Muhammad, who is also a co-organizer for GDG Kumasi as well. I would like to drop them in so you see their faces. Yeah, so that's Mohammed. Hi, Mohammed. And then that's Deborah. Hi, Deborah. And Charity. Hi, Charity. I mean, welcome, guys. This is awesome. DevFest without Jollof, but we are still cool with it because next year we promise there's going to be awesome stuff. Next year we are going to have the real Jollof. You know, Ghana, we are the best in the entire Africa. I mean, I've said it.
Ghana's Jollof is the best in the whole world.
If you have Nigerian issue with me, oh yeah, exactly. So we have the best Jollof in the entire African continent. So we have awesome speakers with us today, and I'm sure we are all going to learn something new from them. But before that, I would like to share some few stuff with you. Those of you who have attended most of the GDG Accra events, you realize we used to have awesome programs. Exactly. So we want to experience something new like this again. I mean, it's been a while we've had something like this, and I wish, in fact, I was there. I can't find myself, but I wish we have something like this again very soon. And if you have not joined GDG Accra platform on Bevy, kindly join. I will share the link as well. So you join the GDG Accra platform to be part of us officially. Yes, so if you want to join us officially, make sure you join the GDG Accra platform to be part of us. Then I would like to quickly hand over to Deborah. But before that, for our keynote speaker, but before that, let me quickly check out something. Okay, so this was DevFest 2019. I mean, we had a great time. Some of you might or were around during the DevFest 2019. You can see what's going on in the picture there. It was really an awesome event. it was really, really, really awesome. I was there myself. Just that I can't really locate myself in the image right there. Yes, but I was there myself. It was really cool, and we are hoping to have something awesome like this once again. So to quickly move on with our event, I would like to invite Deborah. I would like to call on Deborah to introduce our next speaker, who I'm still not seeing. I think she's not around yet, but Deborah, you can take over whilst I check on the keynote speaker. Hi, Deborah.
So do I?
Deborah, you are live. But before Deborah come in, let's hear something from Frank. Okay, so Frank, if you have something to tell us from your end, GDG Kumasi, how is it going? And then if you have GDG Kumasi colleagues here, you would like to say something to them, because you know, we all notice how GDG Kumasi is faring so far, and then most of them are not aware what is going on in GDG Kumasi. So I will give you the opportunity to do so whilst I get the keynote speaker in. Yes, so Frank, you are in.
Okay, thank you very much, Shadrach. Hi everyone, you are welcome to GDG Ghana 2021. This year, GDG Kumasi has organized events, but most of it was virtual. And it's been a while since we organized the physical event. And we are hoping and praying that the COVID situation goes down, so that we'll be able to organize at least a physical get-together by the end of this year, at least to bring the community spirit back up. So I just hope the COVID situation goes down. So hopefully we'll have an in-person get-together by the end of this year for GDG Kumasi members. So all are invited. So Shadrach, can you please take over?
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank. I mean, GDG Kumasi is doing awesome. I had my first speaker session event there. That was the first time I spoke at GDG event, or that's DevFest, and it was really awesome around 2019 December thereabout. Yes, so Frank is really doing great work at Kumasi. So whoever is in Kumasi and is not sure whether there's a GDG community in Kumasi, this is to let you know that Frank he's there. Frank is there, and then he's there with Charity. So for the ladies, you can join GDG Kumasi as well, whereby you can be part of the Women Tech Makers, the WTM platform as well. All right. So we are still waiting for our okay. So let me get down.
We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community.
Hi. Yeah, so we are back. We are back. Sorry. So I would like to invite Deborah. Deborah. Hi, Deborah.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Shadow.
So I would like to invite Deborah to get our first speaker, who happens to be our keynote speaker. So, and a very special person who is also part of the GDG global community. I mean, you guys, it's awesome to have her with us here in Ghana virtually. So, Deborah, you can take over from me now.
Okay. Hello, all. Our keynote speaker for this event is Komal Sandhu. She's the Google Developer Global Programs Lead. Proud to lead in the Google GDG program, she worked on helping build the now Google Developer Students Club Net program. She's incredibly passionate about helping developers be successful. She believes developers are the backbone of technology. According to her, in the world we live in today, the tech industry is no longer its own vertical. It's embedded within every industry and plays a pivotal role in the global economy. She's based out of the New York City Google office. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Komal. Welcome, Komal, to
Thank
the
you
stage.
so much. Thank you so much for having me. I feel so fortunate to be able to spend some time with all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much. What an introduction. You make me feel really good about the work that we're doing. So, yeah, thank you. How is everyone doing? I see we have some folks in the chat. I'm so excited to be joining Ghana virtually. So maybe I can take over. Deborah, do you want me to kick off?
Yes, you should.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. As Deborah mentioned, my name is Komal Sandhu. I am the global program lead within Google developers for the Google Developer Groups program. So specifically, as I mentioned, I look after the GDG program globally. I am based out of the New York City office. I'm currently in Florida. This is not what my apartment in New York looks like. It's actually much smaller. But I've been with Google for about 3.5 years. And before the Google Developer Groups program, I was with the GDSC program, back when there was only a Google Doc for DSC leads to talk about the DSC program. So I really that was the first time that I started working with developers across the globe and really taking time to understand, hey, what does the experience for devs look like, whether they're students in higher ed institutions or in the industry. And it really sparked this interest in me of understanding the role that developers play, not just in the tech industry, but in the world we live in today, right? And so before I kind of get into that, I do want to elaborate a bit about the relationship between Google developer groups and Google, right? Because today we're here at an event at DevFest Ghana, and it's a community event. It is not owned or managed by Google, but there is a relationship with Google. And I think it's important for us to understand what that relationship looks and feels like. So to give you some context, Google's a really big company, right? Within Google, there's Google developers. Within Google developers, there's developer relations. And our goal is to build meaningful relationships with developers all across the globe. Now, within developer relations, there is our product teams like Google Cloud, like Android, Flutter, TensorFlow. And then there's this developer ecosystem team. And that's the team that we are part of. And the developer ecosystem team is committed to helping developers be successful. That is our North Star, is we believe in developers and the power of developers to genuinely make the world a better place through technology. And so our commitment is helping developers be successful. The way that we do it is through community. And so we identify really influential, impactful, passionate leaders in the community, like Shadrach, like Deborah, who have a pulse on what's going on in the local community and work with them, collaborate with them to say, listen, what can we do to help developers in your community be successful? So we're in the background there to support. So for Shadrach to reach out and say, listen, we need speakers or we need content, or hey, here's feedback that we have on products, that's the relationship between Google and Google developer groups. And it's truly one that is defined by collaboration and meaningful feedback. And so these moments, these activities like DevFest, they're truly, truly impactful. They also, for me, I feel really fortunate that they're happening, especially in the kind of environment that we're in right now in light of COVID, because they're special and they bring people together in a time where we've all been tremendously isolated. And so Deborah mentioned this a little bit on why we do this. I talked about, we care about developers being successful. And this is one of the reasons why I love my job. It's because my personal passion and my professional work happen to be bridged. I used to work with so prior to Google, I worked with Apple, and I worked with small businesses in the US and really understanding what their experience looked like and what was working, what was not working. And the common pattern that I found was that oftentimes in small businesses that have less than 100 employees, 50 employees, 10 employees, folks are spending a lot of time doing stuff very manually, and technology can really unblock them, put them in a position to be more impactful, right? And this concept, this theme of using technology to automate processes so that folks and people can really spend their time doing the stuff that makes a difference was something that was really, really important. And so coming into these roles within the Google Developer Student Clubs program and the Google Developer Groups program, where we're dealing with developers, we're dealing with technology, it really solidified this belief that developers are the ones that wield these tools that can help businesses, right? And so as we think about the last 2 years and we think about this pandemic that has, in a way, as much as it has divided us, it has also given us a common experience. Me sitting in New York, or you in Ghana, or someone in Lagos, Nigeria, or someone in Bangalore, India, is we are watching the effects of this pandemic on our communities, on our friends, on our family. And the pandemic, one of the biggest things that have happened is we have watched millions of jobs go away. We have watched hundreds and thousands of companies and businesses shut down. And as we think about how we move forward, really taking the time to think about our local economies and how do we help them recover, technology plays a crucial role in that. And not just technology, but the developers behind that technology play a tremendously crucial role. I get really, I'm very passionate about this because I spend my time listening to stories and joining events and watching folks in different communities across the globe do really incredible things, right? And they're not just focused on upskilling themselves, right? Because in order to give back, you have to learn yourself. And so that concept of learning yourself and giving back is rooted in the identity of the Google Developer Groups program, right? There are over, I believe, 1,100 GDGs across the globe in 149 countries. And each of those GDGs is unique. Each GDG has a set of different organizers, and each of those communities is unique, right? Because the economy looks different, the schooling systems look different, the startup ecosystem looks different, and that GDG is committed to understanding the needs of the developers in that community and tailoring what they cover in, let's say, a DevFest to really match the needs of those developers in those communities. And so today we're here at DevFest Ghana, and the programming is tailored to you. And as much as I'm talking about how special GDG and DevFest is, I also want to call out how special you are for taking the time outside of your personal life, right? Being part of a community is, you're not getting paid to do it. You have jobs, you have commitments, you have responsibilities, and time is very precious. And so for you to say, hey, I'm going to take time out of my day and lean into DevFest Ghana and focus on growing myself and maybe exploring how to use technology to make the world a better place, make my local community a better place, I think that's really, really incredible. And so if there is one thing that I can ask of you today, it is to lean in. Really take the time. I know virtual is different than being part of a community in person. There are challenges that come with that. And I get it's not the same as being able to spend some one-on-one time together, but there are hundreds and thousands of other folks that are here, that are virtual, that are taking the time to say, you know what, I'm tired of learning on my own. I want to make the effort and connect with others and learn together. And so one thing that I ask of you today is to really just lean in. As individuals, we can learn on our own, right? In the comfort of your own home, you can go to YouTube, you can go to Stack Overflow, and you can figure things out yourself. However, the ability to do that in a chat where you have 50 other people that have also joined in that are listening to the same topic, that is really powerful. Learning that can happen through community is really incredible. And I genuinely believe that community is the foundation of innovation, right? You've got really smart individuals, but you put a bunch of smart people together, right, and get them asking questions and being curious, it can be really incredible. And so that's primarily what I wanted to share with you today, is a little bit about me, a little bit about Google and the relationship that Google Developer Groups have with them, the fact that our North Star, whether it's Google or Google Developer Groups or DevFest Ghana, is to help you as developers be successful, really understand what your needs are, ensure that the speakers and the content that we're disseminating really help you do what you want to do best and unblock you. And kind of convey personally my passion around developers and around community, and how it's very important for us to prioritize this time together and to invest in each other and ourselves. And so with that, I will pause and just say, I hope that all of you have a wonderful time today. Ask a ton of questions, get engaged. I'll in the chat add in, actually, you can see my LinkedIn right on there. So please add me on LinkedIn, ask me questions, ping me. If I don't get back to you, I'm sorry, but ping me, message me, and let's chat. Right? Our team is full of Googlers that are really passionate about developers, that are really passionate about mentorship, guidance, and really just understanding the developer experience. So with that being said, thank you so much, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. I'm guessing Deborah is going to come back on to pass out the next person and continue to kick off, but cheers, and everyone, please stay safe.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Of course. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And I hope all of you have a wonderful, wonderful event today.
Okay. Thank you for taking your time to be with us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So we are going to continue with the next speaker. We have We are going to have a session on a composable new world. It's as our Twitter streams become flooded with the release of Jetpack Compose 1.0, it's time to jump into the UI declarative world and reform the XML and all of the find view build calls that exist scattered through the code. Join me in this. Okay, so would our next speaker would take us through this session on a composable world, a UI declarative world, and a reform in the XML of the find view build. Basically, all under Jetpack Compose 1.0. Okay, so I don't know if the speaker is on.
Hello, guys. Yes, so I'll be introducing the speaker. My name is Abigail Wule, and I'm a machine learning engineer. The person taking us through this topic is called Carlos Mota, and he's a lead software engineer at Advanced. Carlos is an Android developer. Is a Google developer expert, and he can easily be spotted either working on Android applications with Kotlin or developing them alongside with Kotlin multi-platform. He's an enthusiast for modern technology and always trying to reach those last 20% of all his side projects that seem to be far away. He loves to share his knowledge with others, either by giving talks, teaching, writing, or along with a cold beer in the nearest pub. GDG Kumasi organizer and Kotlin evangelist. He also has a huge passion for travel, photography, space, and the occasional run. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm introducing to you Carlos Mota. Carlos Mota is going to take us through the topic, a composable new world, as Deborah introduced to you. So let's welcome him.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this great introduction.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great.
I think you just need to add my slides. Thank you. Let me start by saying thank you to the organization. Thank you for organizing and having me here. And of course, I also want to thank you that's in the other side of the screen for watching and to coming to my talk. I hope everyone is safe and secure, and welcome to this composable new world. My name is Carlos Mota. I'm from Portugal. You can find me on Twitter at @cfonsmota. I'm an Android GD, founder of GDG Coimbra. I'm also been writing at Wonder League. I have this dream of one day having my own podcast, but for the time I'm trying to see what I can do and listen to a lot of podcasts, and I love to travel, photography, and running. For this talk, I've created a couple of materials. You can find these slides at my speaker deck. It's under Sembota Composable New World. I've created an application full with Compose. Compose for Android, for the Wear, for the watch, for desktop, and for the web. You can access this directly from my GitHub. I've also created a code lab. So if you want to be more familiar with Compose, you can go to this link, a composable new world, and you can follow Code Lab. It's a workshop. And I'm also trying to have my YouTube channel to just keep posting new videos for when we don't have conferences. So also feel free to subscribe. So a brief history of time. We've seen Android it started back in 2007, 2008. Officially, it was launched, the 1.0 in 2008, and we've been seeing a lot of developments, a lot of features have been released since then. The most important, at least in my opinion, that are worth mentioning is the Android Studio that we start to have a really good IDE on 2013. We stopped having list views and got recycler views in 2014, And in 2017, we started to have constraint layout, our components, and one of the biggest features for all the developers is that we can now get a bit rid of Java and start using Kotlin for Android development. And this is great because with this new language, it allows us to have Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose, it's the new way of creating UI in Android, and it was launched earlier this year, and it's gaining a lot of attention, and a lot of users are already using Compose. It's currently on the version 1.0.5 that has support for Kotlin 1.5.31. And basically, since it was introduced as a stable version back in February, almost it's a big word, but a lot of developers are moving towards Compose. I can say that I've already have apps in production since March, fully written in Compose, and it's really speeding up our development times. So Jetpack Compose, I know I'm talking about faster development times, getting rid of XML and that fine view by ID. I bet you're all real enthusiastic with this. Talking a bit about Jetpack Compose. What is Compose? If we go to the dictionary, we're going to find something similar to this, and I think it's the best word possible to describe what Compose is when you write or create a work of art, special music or poetry, and we should now add here a piece of software. Of course, that if we go to the official site, we're going to read a lot of keywords like less code, it's intuitive, it's going to fasten your development, it's really, really powerful. And this is all true. And I can add more words to this. So you're going to use Kotlin, you're going to have smaller APKs, you're going to use a modern framework. Everything that you complain about XML disappears, and you're going to use most of the things that really modern languages are using for building UI. And trust me, it really accelerates your development. It's also worth to mention that really another cool feature that we have with Compose, a bit for free, is that we are now unbundled from the operating system. An example with this is when Android 10 and 11 was launched, we had a really cool feature that we now could interact with a keyboard, with the EMB. But this was only available on Android 11 and now on Android 12. So what could we do for those older devices that don't have Android 11? Now with Compose, these features, since they're not bundled with operating system, you can easily use these features for interacting with the keyboard back until API 21. So it allows us for that new features to be available on older versions. And it's also always great because we don't need to use that if version SDK it's something, then do this. If it's the other version, do that. No, we can just use it without any bigger complications. But let's talk about a word here that's a bit different, declarative UI. And this is worth mentioning because when you program for Compose, it's really different than you used to do with XML. With XML, you have the concept of imperative UI. With Compose, you now have the concept of declarative UI. Let's see a simple example. Almost all applications use lists. It's something that I bet most of you are already created one. And basically you do something like this. So you create an activity, and of course, if you have activity, you need to have an XML. Okay. Then you create a fragment, and then you create the XML for that fragment. And then you create a recycler view, and then you end up creating the adapter, and then once again the XML for the items. If you have only one type of items, you're going to have one XML. If you want to have multiple items, headers, etc., you're going to have a lot of items, a lot of XML files. So basically, with a really, really simple list, you're going to create 5 files, and you're going to end up writing more than 200 lines of code. So implementing a list nowadays, and this is something that all applications have, it's going to be time consuming since you're going to write a lot of code, 200 lines of code. So basically there is a high possibility that you're going to make a mistake and you're going to make a bug. And once again, this is something that almost all applications have. You're going to create several files, which means that your APK is going to be bigger. And there are always that question there, where should be the click listener? Do I need to implement it on an adapter, on the fragment? There are all those fights to where should be implemented the click events, because although we tried to separate the concerns the most, truth to be said, things are a bit coupled nowadays. Imagine that you now want to change something. We've got this text on the screen. It says hello world, and we're going to change this text to something different. And this is a brief history on how to change the access and change the state of a view. So in the beginning, we do something like this. This view has a specific ID, this text view. I'm going to call find view by ID, and I need to cast it to text view because Android doesn't know what this view is. So you needed to cast it. That's why it's between brackets text view. Then there was a library called Butterknife by Jake Wharton that you can just use the annotation bind view, and then you could access that view directly from the variable that you used for bind view. This took a bit more time to compile because it's using the annotation processor, but it was easier than always calling find view by ID. Then Google decided to drop the text view, so you don't need to always cast it, and you can just call find view by ID, and it would be able to understand what this ID is, what type of view is. And then we have the Kotlin synthetics. So instead of using find view by ID, you could just access you should import the XML references, and you could easily access the views by its ID. Then this was deprecated, and finally we have view binding. So basically we need to enable view binding, we create a binding, and then on that binding, it's a class that is generated when you compile your application. You could easily access to your ID, your component, by just calling the ID name. So we had a lot of iterations just to reach this point, and still it's really verbose to try to access to an item. And if we'll now look at the view class, because all components extend view, we're going to see that text view extends view, image view extends view, view group extends view, and linear layout extends view group that extends view, and the relative layout extends view group that extends view. You get the point. And now, if we dive even deeper, if you go to this view class, we're going to see that there are 30,000 lines of code. This is a lot of lines of code for a component that it's used on almost every other component. So trying to maintain this, it's going to be really, really difficult. The poor developer that's going to make a change on the view class, it might break a lot of things. I really hope everyone is looking at the class and try the most not to touch it. So this means it's really hard to maintain. Every change that you make on this specific class, on this view class, it's going to affect almost all the components. And once again, this is bundled to the OS and of course to the API version on which it's launched. So the big goals of Compose is to be unbundled from platform releases. They exist independent of them. It needs to be faster to implement new designs. We always had the concept of system design on Android, and for that you needed to use styles and themes, and it was really difficult just to get this match of components, of attributes. And when you want to create a new attribute, it's still tricky and time consuming to create everything. This is other thing that Compose is going to solve, and once and for all clarify the state of ownership and who should handle events. So in the imperative UI, you've got your Java or Kotlin code, and you have XML for layouts, attribute styles. With declarative UI, you're going to write functions. UI is a function, and it's only Kotlin. Being said, you can have, of course, part of your application written with Compose and the other part with XML. You don't need to refactor everything. Imperative UI means that how it should happen. Declarative UI means what should happen. Let's see a really simple example on this. Imagine this example, that is, we have three different icons that we are going to build. One of them, we don't have any message, so we don't show any badge, file, or envelope. In the other one, we have a couple of messages. So we want to show a badge with a number and an envelope. And the other, you should really, really read that emails, and we're going to add a fire on top just to call you and to call your attention. If you're going to do this with imperative UI, you should do something like this. You have a function that's called a plate count that receives a number of accounts, and basically you're going to go through each one of the steps. So if count is bigger than 0 and you don't have a badge, you add a badge. If count is 0 and you have a badge, you remove the badge. And then you go over, and if count is bigger than 99 and you don't have fire, you add fire and set the badge as 99. If count is less than 99 and you don't have fire, you remove the fire. So as you can see, you're going step by step, adding or removing components. If the count is more than 0 and you don't have paper, you add paper. If count is 0 and you have paper, you remove the paper. If count is less than 99, you set the badge text as the number. So once again, you go step by step, trying to understand if you should add or remove an element. And these are a lot of lines of code. If you want to move this to declarative UI and to use compose, we're just going to use these 6 lines of code. You use the composable notation on top. You have your function that receives a count. And basically, every time there is a change on count, your UI is going to be built. So the envelope, it's only going to be added if the count, the fire is only going to be added if the count is bigger than 99. And the paper, it's only going to be added if the count is bigger than 0. If the count is bigger than 0, you add count as a number. So basically, every time there is an update on count, you're going to run this function, this composable function. So you don't need to keep adding and removing. No, every time there is an update, everything is run from scratch. And as you can see, these are a lot less lines of code. So it will be way faster to develop this. And hopefully you're also going to have less bugs, because less lines of code means less bugs. So we have a clear winner here. That is declarative UI. But there's more to compose than meets the eye. For instance, I noticed this a couple months ago when Jake Wharton tweeted this. So he was creating the Compose project for iOS. And at that moment, okay, Compose exists for Android, so what the heck? And then Jesse Wilson played a bit with him, saying, okay, there is Compose for Android, browser, command line. Now it has iOS. And what does this mean? If you look closely to the Jetpack Compose libraries, we can see a list of libraries. For instance, the compiler, the runtime, the UI, the foundation, the material, and the animation. If we draw a stack of a high-level diagram of how they all fit, basically we can group the UI, the foundation, the material, and the animation into the Compose UI toolkit for Android. So we've got these 4 libraries that exist for Android, and the others are more platform agnostic, and it is the compiler and the runtime. So the compiler is responsible for transforming these composable functions into UI. It also really optimized, because although you have that composable notation, it doesn't use the notation processor. So it won't add time on your compile builds. It's really fast to create your UI from these composables. It's written in Kotlin, it's available on the OSP, and it's open source. So if anyone wants to dive in and just check that code, feel free. On top of this compiler, you've got the runtime, and the runtime is platform agnostic. It doesn't know what Android or what UI is. It's basically a tree management solution, which means that, okay, you're running this on Android, but if you want to run this on the desktop, and this is what JetBrains did, they use the Compose UI toolkit for desktop. And although the Jake Wharton's code it's proprietary and private, perhaps it's something that he did for iOS. He was able to create these translations from iOS to Compose. There is a really good sentence about this, a really good quote from him. Compose is, at its core, a general purpose tool for managing a tree of nodes. So basically, you can just move and create a Compose UI toolkit, and you will be able to run Compose on almost everywhere. It's also worth mentioning that there are a couple of projects open source on GitHub that use Compose only for the tree management part. So they don't have any UI. They're just using for their own projects that don't show anything. It's just the tree management solution. Of course, that if we go higher on this hierarchy, we're going to have the Compose UI, Foundation, Material, and Animation. The Compose animation, as the name states, it's to easily create animations outside of the box. The material is to create your amazing material design systems that you can extend and create your own, and you can reuse on other projects. The foundations that contain the basic components, the row, column, text, images that you allow you to draw on the screen, and the UI that handles the input management when you write on the keyboard and the compose and you receive this information on the screen. So basically, we can have the Compose as Compose Runtime and Compiler. And once again, we're going to have the Compose UI for Android, desktop, Raspberry Pi, web, console, and hopefully one day for iOS. With this, it's worth mentioning that it was launched last month. The Compose multi-platform beta was released. So this is from JetBrains, and basically it allows you to use Compose on desktop and the web, and it allows you to go even further. I have a project on my GitHub on the repository and Splash where I'm sharing the Android code between Android, desktop, and web. So you can just reuse the whole code, the whole UI, and make everything work. So it's like a develop once and run it everywhere, or almost everywhere, at least for now. So the big question here is, should I switch to Compose? And I'm just going to show you a couple of applications that already publicly said that they're using Compose in production. Not on all the screens, but they have screens in Compose. The Google Play Store, Twitter, Airbnb, Strava, Pinterest, and Square. These are apps used by a lot of people, and they already have parts of their screens in Compose. It's also worth mentioning an article that Chris Bain written a few months ago, where his TV application, it tried to migrate it to Compose. Some statistics: after moving to Compose, the APK size was reduced in 46%. And having a smaller APK, it's great because when you want to install your application, well, we want it to install it fast. If your application ends a lot of time being installed, first you have the data plans that you can't you are limited to what you can use, and then if the applications take too long to install, perhaps the user is going to install another one. Also, the number of methods count was reduced by 17%, so you need to do less things in order to have the same application. And this is true when you look at the lines of source code, when it reduced a lot the number of lines. All of this together means that he was able to build his application in less 29%. So we saw that it's you're going to build applications faster, you're going to write less code, you're going to have smaller APIs, and everything in the end means that you're going to build your applications faster, compiling and writing them. So the big question, should I switch to Compose? I bet you're all wondering. Of course, yes. It's also important to mention a couple of libraries that are already available in Compose. One of the best libraries out there was initially started by Chris Bain, and now it's under Google umbrella. It's called the Accompanist. You have a lot of features available outside of the box. You've got the pager, the permissions, the navigation, the swipe to refresh. All of this is already built in, and you just need to call swipe to refresh, sending the action that you want to be triggered when the user pushes down the list, and everything is done automatically for you. Also worth to mention that feature that I was initially mentioning about the keyboard, you can have it with these insets. It's one line of code for you to handle interaction with the keyboard. Doing this with XML and with Kotlin, with recycler views and adapters, it take you like hundreds of lines of code, and it's always tricky to have everything work. Here, it's like 1-2 lines of code. The Coil library is already available with Compose. You've got Lottie, which is also working with Compose. So now that I'm giving you everything, I bet that you moved to a question, how it starts. So how can you start working with Compose? My advice is to first start by creating an empty project. Okay, Android, this is already built in with the latest version of Android Studio. You've got an empty compose activity template that you can start. Looking at the configuration, you can see that you need the mini SDK to be 21, and you need to enable a couple of features. The JVM target needs to be 1.8, you need to use the R compiler, and you need to enable compose. After this, you need, of course, to define the Kotlin compiler version and everything. A couple of dependencies. Instead of using AndroidX.material.activity, you will now need to use AndroidX.compose UI for the UI library. For the activity, you need to call activity compose. Let's see a real example. Imagine that you want to display this text on the screen. Hello world. So doing this without compose, you do something like this. You'd use a text view with all of these attributes, width, height, and define the text and set an ID. And then if you want to change this text, you do something like you're going to find view by ID or the view bindings, and you just call text and give it the new text. With compose, you're going to use the composable text, and you manage to do the exact same thing. And if you want someone to change the value of world to be hello Android, for instance, you just create a composable function that receives the name, and then it's going to change the text to be hello and this attribute that you're going to receive, this parameter that you're going to receive. So if you open the text composable, you're going to see that it also has a composable, meaning that needs to be that you've been used by the compose compiler to be rendered with the UI. So on top, when you want to use compose, you use the composable annotation, and then you need to create a function. In this case, I've called it greeting. It receives a name, and it uses the composable text to display a text. Every time there is a change on name, this will be rendered. So you don't need to be calling greeting over and over again. You just need to change the name, and the screen will automatically be redrawn. Now imagine that you want to add a second text. For instance, the number of coffees that you took today. Doing this without compose, it should be something like this. You have your linear layout, or other type of layout, and you have two text views. Doing this with compose, it's going to be add a new text. Okay, it's not just add a new text. This happens because you're going to call these composables on a surface. You're going to call it to be always run on the same position, 0, 0, that corresponds to the top left corner. To have them stack, you're going to use column for this. You add these two text under a column, composable. Once again, this is a composable. And with this, they're going to be stacked vertically. If instead you want to stack them horizontally, you can just call row instead. Quite easy. And you can see how less code we're writing, right? So now imagine that you want to change the background. You're going to call, there is a class called modifier, a composable called modifier, and you can define the background. And with this, we've defined the background to be green, and it automatically changed the background as the default value to be green. Now imagine that we want this column to fill the entire screen, so the entire screen is going to be green. We just call fill max size. Now imagine that we want to add a small padding to avoid having these two texts really on the left top corner. We can just call padding and give it a value, and it will automatically move it away from the top left or starter position. Now imagine that we want to center this on the screen. We can call horizontal alignment and vertical arrangement and saying that we want it to be on center. Now imagine that we want to change the color. We want hello world to be white. Okay, quite easy. You just need to call the attribute color or the perimeter color and set it as white. So once again, this is really, really simple to do, and you're really writing UI with less lines of code. You don't need to go to the XML and then back and go further. You only do it on the same place. Now imagine that you want to add an image. Without compose, we'd use an image view with a source and content description and everything. Doing this with composable, you can use the composable image. You need a painted resource, and you're going to say which resource it should be loaded. And you also need to set the content description. This content description is important for you to define. So in terms of accessibility, the Android can be able to say, okay, this is an image. So always define the content description. Now imagine that you want to add a button. Without Compose, you've got your linear layout and all the components, you're going to add a button. On Compose, it's quite simple. You're going to use the composable button, and you need to be inside composable button, add a text. Okay. You can also add an image, and you're going to have an image inside the button. It gives you quite a flexibility here. In this case, I'm just using this text to be easier to explain. Now we want to change the state of that 0 number, that's number of coffees. We want to interact with our UI. So when you create on the plus button, we want this number to be increased. So without Compose, we will do something like this. We have our variable count, and we're going to build a string with this count by sending the string resource, and sending this count. Every time someone clicks on the button, we set an on-click listener and we increment this count. Doing this with Compose, it's quite simple. You just need to create a count and use the keyword remember and create a mutable state of and give it the default value, in this case 0. So it's going to be this value here. Every time there is an update here on click event, you're going to increment this value by 1, and you don't need to do anything. Since you're calling this value on count.value, every time this value updates, this column, this greeting composable, will automatically update. You don't need to be calling greeting over and over again. No. Since you're using remember and incrementing this value, every time there is an update here, the UI automatically will be redesigned only this part of the screen. So it's highly efficient and highly optimized. A couple of samples that I've mentioned before. So you can see a sample application here. I've created this Unsplash application that is fully built with Compose. It goes fetch the data to the Unsplash API, gets the most trending images. It allows you to search. So we've got the Compose UI library here. I'm overlapping images with text, with overlays. We've got a navigation bar on the bottom. You can switch between screens. If you want to try Compose on the where, you can also do it. It works. Although it's still on a beta version. You also have Compose for the desktop. As you can see, this application is running, and you can see that it's a desktop application because I'm just going to increase the window size by just using the mouse. And of course, also there is a web version that you can use with Compose. Although Compose for the web is a bit different because you still need to use the divs, but these divs are composables that you can use. A couple of resources worth mentioning. You've got here a couple of links if you want to know more about Compose. You've got a couple of samples from Google on their GitHub and from JetBrains, and you also have the Compose catalog. The community is really strong on Compose adoption. You have the Twitch from IntelliJable, which is from Google. You have Joe Burge, Jetpack Compose blog, and George Castillo dev that's been posting articles on Compose, and he even wrote a book. Of course, if you have any question, you can always send me a message, send me a tweet, talk with me on LinkedIn, where you prefer. I'm here to answer everyone's questions.
Wow, that was really amazing. Like, I mean, I'm not really a developer. I'm a machine learning engineer, but I've had prior experience to Android before, so I know how simple XML is, and I couldn't have thought that XML can be made simpler. So I was really fascinated. I was like, wow, all this thing can happen. And as engineers, we are usually interested in how fast can this run, and is it taking so much space? I'm thinking of big O of N and things of the sort. So when I saw that this was actually solving most of those problems, I was really happy to hear. So thank you so much for this presentation. I'll take questions now. So guys, if you have any questions, please ask at this point. Okay, so I think I will invite Sosu. Sosu has a question to ask, so you can just put him on the call so he goes ahead. Hello.
Okay, hello for the amazing talk. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
One of the things that I never thought Jetpack Compose could be used for was on the console, on the web, and Raspberry Pi. I always thought it was just for specifically for Android, so like a replacement for Android. But today, attending this event, you'll be able to clear that misconception and enlighten us a bit. And I'd like to thank you very much. And hopefully, after this event, I will start digging a bit into it to use it for my Android apps. Since SML always gave me a 10 off, so I ran off. I ran off it a bit. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's true. To be honest, I think most of the community only realized that they could use Compose on other platforms after people start showing case of examples of it working on other platforms. I remember when I first saw it on the desktop, I was, whoa. I think I have only developed desktop applications when I was back on university. So let me try to do this. And it worked like we managed to make everything work in like a couple of hours. It was crazy for us.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So I also have a question. It's not so technical, but given the fact that I mentioned that I didn't know that XML could be simplified, or we could have something else called Compose, which kind of like simplifies things a lot more. So I'm just wondering, thinking about the future terms, do you think there could be a point where Google says, okay, we are coming up with something new, which is actually going to be a lot better than Jetpack Compose? Is that possible?
Yeah, I have to say yes, because I believe that no, because we've for the past 10 years we've been seeing XML, and we've seen a lot of evolutions of XML. For instance, one of the best ones was the view binding, what we could finally access directly to those references. I think Compose will exist perhaps for the past 10 years. But well, in 10 years, if we look back to see what happened on the past 10 years, the evolution that we had, I'm sure that on the next 10 years, it will be even better to develop for Android, and faster and less bug prone and everything. So I think this is a solution for the next 10 years. But after these 10 years, I'm sure they are going to create something even more, even better.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Nice, interesting. Thank you so much. Guys, please, the floor is still open for questions. If you have any question, this is your time to ask.
Yes,
So
I think I
please
have
go
a
ahead.
question here.
Okay. Let
Does
me
it
look.
mean you have to call? It's on the screen. It means you have to
Okay.
call compose on each function, or you can call compose. You have to call. So when you create a new activity, you can still create activities that you as you did before. But when instead of calling that set content view that you used to give a reference to that function or to that method, now you use the composable set content view. So it's a different set content view because it receives composable functions. So on that, you need to call composable functions every time you want to show something. So you're going to still call an activity as you used to create, extending app, compact activity, and everything. But on your onCreate method, you need to call the set content view from composable, and then call your composable functions.
Guys, any more questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to thank Carlos. Carlos, thank you so much for the time. Like, I really learned a lot, and I know for sure I'm going to go back to Android, and I'm going to get used to all this stuff that you just mentioned here. They're so cool. Thank you so much, and we're happy to have you. So I'm going to
Thank you,
hand over
everyone,
to, yeah,
and thank
yeah,
you for the kind words.
sure, you're welcome. I'm going to hand over to Alfred at this phase. He's going to take over and introduce us to our next speaker.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Our next speaker is going to be talking on one of the interesting topics. It's about how to create animations in Flutter. It's one of the topics that intrigued me because with just a few lines of animations, you can add some quality to your apps and engage users much better. Okay. So our next speaker is a lead developer at Pivotal. He has used Flutter as one of his main technology in even building two different startups. He's also a GDE in Flutter and has contributed to various open source apps in Flutter also. He's a community member of the Flutter Portugal community, and he writes engaging articles on Medium about Flutter, which I'll share the link in the chat also. Let's welcome Goncalo Palma, everyone.
Hey, Alfredo. Thank you so much for the kind words. I mean, it was a great introduction. And I really hope that my talk delivers in exactly what you want, which is to show that in Flutter, with just a simple line of code, we can create beautiful animations. So I don't need to introduce myself again. I'm Gonzalo Palma, and the focus of this talk is going to be how are we going to bring more life into our applications using Flutter? And we need to ask a question first, which is, why should we use animations in our apps? Is it mandatory? Is it not mandatory? Well, the truth is that with a static UI, we can only use colors and shapes to drive user interaction. So for example, in this app that you're seeing here on the right, we have the buttons that have a specific shape and color. We have the like button. And then we also have here the notification dot. So they imply that the user can interact with it, but then they don't give any feedback on that interaction. And this is where the animations will bridge the gap. Because the truth is, imagine the following. Maybe you're clicking on a download button, right? And the app just doesn't show anything. So you click on the start cooking and the app does nothing. Then you don't know what is happening. Maybe the app is making an API request. It takes 10 seconds to get back and they navigate to a new screen. But during those 10 seconds, your user will think, wait, the app blocked. So there is surely a bug in my application. But no, the truth is that without animations, we cannot give the context to the user of what is happening. And more than that, we cannot give the user the feedback of what is happening in the application. So you see a lot of animation happening here on the right. So for example, when you click on a new item, you see that the item pops in. But when you click on like, you see the big heart, we see buttons sliding in. So we are first giving more expression to our applications, but also we are guiding now the user, because now the user knows, okay, so this is the information because it's something new that was added to the screen. I know that this element now catches more my attention. And when I click on an item and it gets pushed to a new page and it gets zoomed in, then I know, okay, this is the detail for that item. So it's really just, like I said at the start, with animations, we bring more life and we can express ourselves how we like in our own applications. So the question is, how can we do it in Flutter? And truth, there are two types of animations. First, the implicit animations. These animations are not loopable and are also animations that we don't need to control. So we don't need to pause, we don't need to reverse, we don't need to do any of it. And Flutter offers us animated foo or animated X widgets, such as animated position that you can see in action here, that will help us create these interactions. So very simple. But again, and to reinteract, these are actions that are one shot. So as you can see here, the button slides only once and the animation ends. And that's it. So an initial to and end value. So if we need more control over our animations, if we need to loop our animations, if we need to pause them, reverse them, etc., then we'll need to use explicit animations. And explicit animations will need an animation controller. So that animation controller will be used by foo transition or any widget that ends with transition, such as slide transition, scale transition, etc. And we will be able to use the animation controller to use forward, reverse, etc. to control the pace of our animation. So now let's dive in a little bit into the implicit animations. And again, going back, implicit animations are those that go from the beginning value to the end value, don't loop, and we don't control any of the, we don't have any control over the animation. And they are very easy to be implemented. So again, they are, we have a value, for example, the value for an opacity, and we want to show our widget. So first, the widget is hidden, so the opacity is 0. If we are in a stateful widget, we call the setState function, and we set the state for the value to be 1. And the widget will say, oh, okay, so something's changed, the value for the opacity changed from 0 to 1, so I will animate that change on that widget. And the same thing happens, for example, for colors. Imagine that you have a widget that has a background with the color of gray, and when you click on it, it animates to green. So you call setState when you click on that button, and Flutter will say, okay, so this widget has an initial value of gray, then it has to green, and it will be able to interpolate all the colors over a duration, which is going to be the duration of your animation, and it will display your animation. And again, we can use widgets like animated size and animated opacity to just influence one attribute of our animations, or we can use animated container in the case that we want to animate different properties at the same time. So let's start at it step by step. And the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create our widget. And let's create the very, very, very simple widget. So basically, this is a stateful widget. Inside our body, we'll have a scaffold, a center, and then an icon, which is going to be the favorite of the heart icon with a size of 100. That's it, nothing fancy. What are we going to do with it? Well, we want to animate its opacity. And like I said before, the only thing that we need to do is first, let's declare an initial value. So I want my heart to be hidden at the start. So the opacity is going to be 0. And then I want to have some change on the button. So I'll have a floating action button that will trigger a set state, and we'll have this condition over here, which basically translates to if the opacity is 0, then put it as 1. If it's 1, then put it as 0. We then wrap our widget, our center with the icon with an animated opacity. We give it the opacity value, and we give it the duration. So how long should this animation take? And voila, as simple as this. At the click of a button, we can trigger our animation, and the animation will go from 0 to 1, showing the icon, or from 1 to 0, hiding the value. And again, we don't have any control over it, but it was simple to implement because it was just declaring the property, declaring an initial value for it, and then using setState to change its value. So let's see a more complicated case. Let's say that we want to use an animated container because we want to animate different properties at the same time. We want to change the width, the height, the alignment, and the color at the same time. And if you were trying to do this probably in under a framework or another platform, it probably would be too complicated, but in Flutter, with the animated container, we use exactly the same thing. So we state first some initial values, and then we are going to use setState, and with setState, we will be able to interpolate from the initial values to the end values. And we can have a cute little animation like this. So we are changing many properties at the same time, but the only thing that we are changing are variables using setState, or if you were using, for example, state management, you would be able to also do the same thing. The only thing that needs to happen is that your animated widget needs to know that, oh, okay, so I went from one state to another state, and I'll need to animate this. Now, if you look at the animation that is currently on the screen, you see that it's kind of blank. So the way that the heart goes from one place to another, it's predictable. And this is because it is using a linear approach to interpolate between the two values. And we can change this by giving more life into our animation with animation curves. So what are animation curves? Well, they are a way to interpolate between a beginning and an end value. By default, we'll have a linear curve. So the linear curve, it goes from 0 to 1 in a linear way. So you can see here on the right some examples, some examples of animations playing with a linear curve. But fortunately, Flutter allows us to have other kinds of curves Like, for example, the slow middle, which starts fast and ends fast, but then at the middle is slow. And you can see here at the right how the animation plays. We have the curve elastic out, which is basically, it's a huge speed at the start and goes even over the value, and then it tends to the maximum value, and you can see again the animation here, or the is in out back, which starts a little lower and ends a little higher. So it seems like we are in an elastic band, for example. So let's see this in action, because on one end, as we said before, default will have our curves.linear. But let's try with a fast out, slow in. So it will start fast, but it will slow into the end of the animation. And then if you want to give even more life to your animations, you'll have the bounce out. And I really love this because it bounces, it gives more expression to your animations. And you're asking, oh, but will this be very difficult to add to my to my animations? And the answer is no. Pardon me. Because the only thing that we need to do is in our animated container or in any of our animated widgets, just need to add one parameter. So in this case, we are adding the curves of curves.bounce out. In the curves class, you'll have a lot of static parameters such as the bounce out, which will translate to everything that we've shown in the previous slides, right here. So in the Flutter documentation, you can see all the types of curves that you have to animate your applications. Now, up until this point, we have been only going from an initial value to an end value, but we have no control over it. So we use set state, it changed the application state, the widget will change, but imagine that we want to add more complex animations. Maybe we don't want just to go from 0 to 1. We want to go from 0 to 3 to 2 to 5 and then to 0 again. How can we do this? How can we chain different animations together? And the answer is that we can use explicit animations. And they are a bit more difficult to implement than the implicit animations. So it's just not the case of using set state and it will change the way that the widget looks. But let's go at it step by step. First thing that we need is, of course, a stateful widget. And inside the state of the stateful widget, we are going to have the ticker provider mixin. This will give some properties for the animation and is going to be used by the animation controller that we'll see just about right next. And the ticker provider mixin is used when we have multiple animations, but if we only have one, then it's the single ticker provider mixin. Then we'll need to use an animation controller. As I stated before, this animation controller will use all the tools from the ticker provider mixin in order to be able to control the animations. And finally, and of course, this animation controller is going to be used to start, pause, and resume our animations. And then at the end, we have the animated widget. So our state will create an animated widget that is controlled by our animation controller, and you have the scale transition, fade transition, animated widgets, and others and others and others. So let's, again, step by step, see how we can implement an explicit animation in Flutter. First thing that we need to do is I'm going to use just only one animation, so I'm going to use the single ticker provider mixin. I will create my homepage state, I will extend the state, and with the width, I will say that I'll need a single ticker provider state mixin. Then we need to initialize an animation controller. The animation controller has a set of properties. For example, we can say the duration of the animation, and we can say the lower and the upper bound. So imagine that we are scaling an icon, for example. Maybe we don't want to shrink it to 0 and then to 1. Maybe we just want to go from 70% to 120%. And here you can stipulate those bounds. So what is the beginning value and what is the end value? Then what we need to do is we are going to give this controller to an animated widget. So in this case, we are using a scale transition. We are going to scale down and up our widget, and we give it a controller. One important thing, which is since we are using a controller, we cannot forget to dispose it on the dispose. So whenever our widget is no longer on the tree, we are going to dispose of our controller so that it's not occupying any more memory. And now we can play with it. So we have our controller, and it again, in implicit animations, we just need to change the values. Here we use the animation controller to control our animations. So with controller.forward, our animation will be played forward once. So it's like an implicit animation. It goes from the begin value to the end value, and that's it. If we want to repeat our animation, so it goes to 0 to 1 to 0 to 1 to 0 to 1, then we use the repeat. And as you can see here from the image, it seems like the heart icon is exploding and then going back to the initial value. And maybe this is not what we want to represent, because maybe what we would like is for it to go from 0 to 1, but then to 1 to 0. And truth is, it's very easy to do this because repeat has a parameter called reverse that if we set it to true, it will do exactly this. So we'll be able to go from 0 to 1 and then go back to 0 again. Again, just one line of code. And now, we also need or may need to know what is the current status of the animation, because imagine that we are chaining different animations at the same time. And we want to see if it's at 50% state, if it's completed, if it's not started. And we can do that by adding a status listener to our controller. And it will say, for example, if the status equals to complete, then I'll be able to reset the controller, and I'm going to be able to play back the animation. So the code that I just wrote here is basically the code for the repeat, but inside a status listener. So again, if we need for any reason to listen to the current status of our animation, then we can use a status listener inside our controller. Now, up until now, we have been interpolating between just two values, a beginning and an end value. And we say that we can do that with twin. So a twin interpolates between beginning value and an end value. But what if we want to interpolate between different values or a series of values? In that case, we can use a twin sequence, because maybe we want to go from 0 to 1, but then from 1 to 2, and from 2 back to 1, and then to 0.5, right? And this is going to be a sequence of twins. So it's going to be a sequence of interpolation of values. And it's going to be just a little different than the animation controller, although we are going to also use the animation controller. First thing that we need to do is, for the case of a single twin, we create the twin by giving it a beginning and an end value and assigning it a type. So in this case, I want to scale an icon, so it's going to be a double. So my beginning and end values will be doubles. Then I can always chain this twin by adding a curve like we did in the implicit animation. So in this case, I'm just going to use the curves of is. Then we'll need to, the images are not here, but we'll be able to create an animation controller. And this animation controller will not need to specify the lower or the upper bound. We'll see in this, although this is not here, we'll see it in later slides. And we'll need to create a new value called animation double that will allow us to animate our twin. So right up until this point, we had our animation controller, and we gave our animation controller to our slide transition, for example. But the truth is our animation controller is outputting or returning a type of animation double, which is exactly what our twin does. So when we are using a twin and interpolating between two values with the animate, we are outputting an animation double that will be used by our widget. And we will be able to see that when we twin multiple values. And I'm deeply sorry for this not working. I don't know why the images are not showing, but we'll be able to see them in action right in the next slides when I talk about the twin sequence. So we've talked about up until now how we can use only one twin, but using one twin is exactly as if we were using a controller, right? Because we are just interpolating between a lower bound, an initial value, and an end value. And this may not be what we want. Maybe we want to interpolate between different values, between an initial one, end one, and then an intermediary one, and so on and so on. And for that case, we'll be able to use a twin sequence. But in order to use a twin sequence, we'll need to create a series of twin sequence items that will have two arguments. First, a twin, the one that we created before, and then a weight. And the weight, you can see it if you've used, for example, expanded inside columns. You know that if you give a large flex to one, it will occupy a large space, and a small flex will occupy a lesser space. So the weight in the scope of the twin sequence is going to be how long will this animation be in comparison to all the others. So inside our twin sequence, we'll be able to chain multiple twin sequence items. So in this case, what is happening is that the weight of the first one is 70. The weight of all the others is going to be 7.5, which means that the first animation will be very, 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 very long, and the others will be very, very, very short. And all in sequence, and they will all use the same set of values. So the same initial and the same end value. The thing that we need to do then is the animate controller, and this is what was missing in the previous slides. So whenever either a twin sequence or a twin uses the function animate with the controller, we are going to output an animation double. And it's going to be exactly this what we are going to use inside our transition or our animated widgets. So we declare our animation double value. We initialize our controller. Again, we don't need neither an upper or a lower bound. And then we have our twin sequence that will give an animation double. This animation double will then be used by our scale transition so that it knows how to animate everything. And the end value is what we have on the right. So it's going to be like a beating heart pump. We have one very long animation at the start with a weight of 70, and then 3 or 4, I can't remember, that are very small just to try to simulate the heart pump or fake heart pump. So up until now, we've seen two types of animations that happen in the same screen, right? So we have the implicit animations, and the implicit animations are all types of animations that go from an initial to an end value, and in which we have no control over. Then we have the explicit animations, in which we have a lot more control. So here we see that we can pause, we can reverse, we can repeat them, and we can even chain multiple twin sequence, and we can also chain different animations. So you can think of it, if we use the status listener, we can start another animation right when the first one ends. So we can chain multiple animations using an explicit animation. But the next example is also a type of animation that I really like that gives even more expression to your app. And these are the hero animations. And hero animations allow us to give context to our actions. So basically, the animation on what I want you to focus is when we click on an item, the item goes from one page to another and zooms out. So this will give the user context of, yes, I clicked here, and this is the image or this is the item that I wanted to see. And although it might seem like a very, very, very complex animation to do, reality is that the only thing that we need to do is to wrap our first widget on the first page with the hero widget and give it a tag. And then on the second page, we'll do the same exact thing, but on the second widget. So we use a hero widget, we give it a tag, and finally we call navigator push. So when we push it, it will know that, okay, this is the first hero widget. This is the second hero widget. I will need to animate the translation from this page to that page using this widget. And that's just it. So first, we wrap our widgets on the hero tag, on a hero widget. Second, we give it a tag, and then we push our screen. Just one thing, if you have, for example, a list view builder and you want to use a hero animation to all your items, you have to be careful because there can only be one tag at the same time in the widget tree. So this means that, for example, instead of having a tag only called image hero, if you are inside the list, it would be very helpful to have also the index or maybe some information about the item, so you have a unique tag to go to. And this is mostly it. So these are the basic animations that you can do in Flutter. So we've seen that first we had a static application in which you had just a hint of interaction by using colors and shapes. And then we had more value to our app. We added more life to our app by adding more things to it. So now the user knows how to navigate the application. We can grab their attention by adding, for example, a big like or a big animation that we can use at the center. We can even go a step further and use Rive or other platforms in order to give even more or better animations to our application. But more than that, never forget, we are giving feedback. So whenever a user clicks on a button and we know that the action is going to take a long time, that long time will be filled by animation, will be filled by something else. So the user will never feel that they are just waiting or that the app just broke or that something is wrong. They are given feedback. I thank you very much for hearing to my talk. I know it was a brief talk. Here in the QR code, you will be able to see my blog. You will see I have a weekly newsletter, so every week I'm publishing a new Flutter article. And also, if you want mentoring on Flutter, I still have one spot available at Mentor Cruise. And you'll also find all my social media links and all my previous blog posts over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Albonkawulu, for such an interesting topic and taking us through to learn the ropes. It was really intriguing. I always thought animations in Flutter are very difficult, especially with the explicit animations. The twins used to confuse me. What is twin? What is twin sequence? But after this talk, I'll be able to understand it, and I'll rewatch this video to re-understand it much better. We'd like to thank you very much. I look forward to using implicit animations, hero animations, and all other things in my apps to make sure that they are engaging for users. I've tried using the hero animations. And, yeah, with just something as simple as just adding a tag and a widget, I get such lovely things in my apps. One thing I'd like to ask is, with the explicit animation, we saw that a lot of things goes into it. So is there any package or any way where at least we can reduce that?
That is a very interesting question. So right before this talk, I gave the same talk for the DevFest Portugal, and I had exactly the same question. So first, before answering your question, whenever you have any new animations, I will want to see them. So please tag me on Twitter because I want to see everything that you will do with explicit and implicit animation. I'm very, very curious. And to answer your question, the truth is there are millions of packages about animations, and that is the truth. So it will really depend on case by case. So are you wanting to animate a button? Do you want to animate maybe the sliders? So we have a page view with different sliders. Do you want to animate text? There are packages that will control almost everything. What I like to think is, okay, what do I want? Do I want to create a custom animation that my designers or that myself want, and it will be controlled by me, but it will be very cool? Then in that case, I will learn how to use explicit animations because they are not very hard to understand. But if it's something very complex, or if it's something that you look at the pub.dev page and it's exactly this, then for sure, use it. But be always on the lookout that it's better to try it for yourself. Because if you try to do it once or twice, then one day when there will be no package available for your use case, you'll know how to do it. So to answer shortly, there are millions of packages, but it's always best to learn how to do it. Or you can go also the extra step, which is look at the packages that you like, look at the animations that you like, go into GitHub and see how they did it and learn from it.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful answer. Definitely, the path to go is to practice it, do it yourself, and get better at it. So you don't rely entirely on the packages. That will help your career also.
Yeah.
One last question I would like to ask is: are there any best practices for us to follow when designing animations?
Best practices to follow when. That's a very interesting question. I've never thought much about it. So I'd say that it's best to try to isolate components. So the same way that you try not to have a huge widget tree in which you have maybe a file with 1,000 or 2,000 lines of codes of a widget, try to isolate also the animations into simple widgets and try to isolate them there so that you don't have like a ticker provider mixin that controls lots of animations at the same time. They can be isolated widgets that they each control their own animation. So you don't have one mastermind class that controls everything. Each will know how to do things. And then you can provide them callbacks, or you can provide them something that you'll be able to see that, okay, for this widget, you can start now the animation. Or you can even pass the animation controller to those widgets.
Thank you very much for the answer also. It's really insightful. This session was really, it's as if this session was created specifically for me because I really needed to know a lot about animations in Flutter. And I really enjoyed the talk and I hope to learn more from you also.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind words. And thank you so much for the invitation. It was really good to be here. And I hope that next year we can meet all in person.
Yeah, definitely. We hope so. Thank you too. So I would like to introduce Samuel, who will be introducing our next speaker. So Samuel, you can take over.
Hi, thanks Alfred. So up next, every workflow involves a series of fixed or conditional tasks, a bunch of stakeholders and heaps of confidential data. When all this is handled manually, there's a high chance of tasks slipping through the tracks and developers missing key steps. Down the road, it can lead to more severe problems like compliance issues, policy violations, and more. That is why we invited Martin Kodo. Martin is a Google developer expert on cloud, a mentor and consultant for startups, an international speaker, and he is passionate about modern hiking. He will show us how to orchestrate and automate Google Cloud and HTTP-based API services with serverless workflows. Hi, Martin, and welcome to DevFest.
Okay, so for now, I think Martin is not yet in, so I could use this opportunity to give a few announcements before that.
Sure.
Yeah. So one thing, So one of the things is that there's going to be some giveaways today. So after our next speaker, a form will be shared. So kindly fill that form to be eligible for those giveaways. That's all I'd like to say. So now you can take over and.
Okay, sure. So, okay, I think Martin is here with us. Hi, Martin.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Nice having you.
Great.
Okay.
So how we are going to proceed?
So we've done. Your lives. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So I can start my presentation then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good, nice. Let me close the doors. So welcome. My name is Marton, and today I will talk to you about cloud workflows and have some product that is something amazing to share screen. Yes, okay, I have the share screen on. Great. So one more thing here to open some things here. So we are going to talk about cloud workflows. While I get this set up, because I have some live demo set up here, you can find me on Stack Overflow. For example, I'm answering questions there. My username on Stack Overflow is Pentium 10. Also, the slides are on SlideShare, so effectively you are able to actually read it on SlideShare as well. The slides, I will put it up there and you will have it. Other than that, I'm a GDE on cloud technologies. So I work with Google technology. I answer a lot of Google technology things, and one of the products that we are going to use today is cloud workflows. About our agenda for today is that we need to see that connecting services is challenging. So there are developer challenges that every time we need to implement. We will see what is cloud workflows, practical use cases, what's new in cloud workflow because new additions were added, and also advanced examples. Let's see how far we can get, because this presentation has 2 sections and I want to cover as much as I could on this presentation. So, challenges in connecting services. Whenever we talk about connectivity, it should be easy, but in reality, you need to figure it out. You need to parse the results. You may have decision or conditional stop execution, the need for execution when you are connecting services. It could be a code challenge to actually build out this component. You don't have a built-in error handling. You don't have any logging built in. You need to actually add it, build out based on the application requirements. Eventually, advanced cases are polling, retries, or exponential backup, which indeed helps a developer and an application in production to be 100% uptime or less error prone and so on. And nowadays, as everything is mostly serverless, we need to scale up and down to 0. And I need to mention down to 0 because in connecting services, you may have time where you don't need the services, you don't need the server, and so on. Other than that, there are authentication and capturing callbacks. Callback when another service pings you back when it wants to signal you something are something that in connecting services, a developer needs to custom develop and so on. But meet cloud workflows. Cloud workflows is part of the Google Cloud Platform, and it's a product that sits on top of all the APIs and services. Essentially, you can orchestrate any Google Cloud API here I need to mention, which means that, for example, you can have automation of serverless compute engines, Cloud Run, Cloud Functions, and all the other items, other products from the Google Cloud Platform. You can connect between them, you can orchestrate, you can manage services between them. Also, there are the Google APIs. Here we need to mention that some APIs could be, for example, a machine learning API like Document AR, or a natural language processing API to get sentiment analysis. All these could be APIs. but also supports external and private APIs. So essentially, not just Google Cloud Platform is covered. We have also external API, calling external API. And actually, this is something I want to demo for you because Google Cloud API is working through connectors. I will explain what are connectors. So essentially, it means that whatever external API you have, you can orchestrate and integrate for that. Orchestration means that you are pulling the results and you decide something based on the error. Or the decision, it means that you take action. So you do an action based on some findings, some variables. Now, in a nutshell, what is GCP workflow? So it's a step automation as a service. It's serverless. It's HTTP service automation in another name. I mentioned all these names because people may not understand what a workflow is, because in English, the workflow word is actually describing a tree of elements and steps, sequencing steps of executions. Declarative workflow language is YAML and JSON as well, but YAML is something that we will demo and use it. It has decent pricing. It's only 1 for 100,000 items, and externals cost only 3 and 5 for 100 items as well. It has built-in decision conditional execution. You can work on formulas, operation on variables, and so on. You can have code in sub-workflows similar to a routine or a function in programming language. Support for external API codes out of the box. So I will let you know how you can do HTTP calls easily. Integrates with any Google Cloud product without worrying about authentication. So the library itself, which does the authentication, is implemented. You only need to supply the service account key which has the permission of the Google Cloud product to run the service, and that's it. The rest will just work. Callback feature is something recently added, and callbacks mean that an external service will signal your workflow step to continue or to trigger or to start. And open solutions for async business or open solution for human-in-the-loop orchestration task. Which means that essentially if you have 5 steps, 1, 2, 3 could be automated, and 4 and 5th could be triggered only when the callback action is received from the external system. We will see what that means. It has enterprise security, so it has the service account definition to do the Google Cloud connectivity services. Also has integration with Secret Manager using external, for example, Secret Manager keys, API keys you place in Secret Manager, and then those API keys can be used on the external API calls as well. Suppose there is a SendGrid call here, or Twilio, or MailChimp, or let's say Bitly service, the link shortener. Those are working with API keys, and you can place them in Secret Manager. That means that it's not part of your code, and Secret Manager is a Google Cloud Platform product where you store all these in an industry modern way. Now, if we talk about workflow, we need to see what are the intermediate steps of a workflow execution. So essentially, we need to discuss the anatomy of a cloud workflow. Here, we need to start, when the workflow starts, it has parameters. You could use parameters to actually build out versatile and verbosity into the workflows. When the workflow is running, it's executing certain steps, so it could have multiple steps. If there is no issue, everything is succeeded, so actually this goes into the succeeded state. But if, for example, one of the steps are timing out, it could be, for example, a failed operation as well, but it could be also a retry process, and it can try out and then goes to the failed only when reaches the limit of the retries, like 5 retries and so on. Essentially, Some additional functionality like callback feature is the one that we need to understand on this loop diagram. So essentially, you can place here awaiting a callback. It means that you set up a listening for an external service. The external service you can set up, for example, to listen for 1 hour. If the service doesn't respond, it means it will produce a timeout and it will essentially, that step fail. But the callback service could produce an event. The event is an incoming HTTP call and it has access to the callback endpoint. The callback endpoint was set up by the callback component in a listen mode. Essentially, this means that it will continue executing the workflow. This is an awesome feature. Like, for example, you can have a callback placed. You can send, for example, a one step. Send an email, prepare the email, dispatch the email, and wait for the callback of, for example, a SendGrid service where they let you know that the email has been delivered. This callback could go as an event delivered email. It's being set up in an incoming call, and then you process the rest of the steps. The rest of the steps could be anything, for example, maintenance or stock or whatever steps you did. Now, if we look for the code examples, a basic code example is a YAML file. It has a step name and essentially it has a body. In the final, it has a return statement. In the body, it could have different logics as well. Deploying, you could deploy many times. You can use the UI to actually deploy, but you can also use the gcloud utility. By deploying, you name the service, you name the workflow name, and you put the file that the workflow defines. Executing the workflow, it's executing by this keyboard, describing executions because you have the executions triggered, so you need to describe it. When you describe the workflow, you get this basic example. This is just a basic example how the workflow annotation is working. You have a state, it says that it succeeded. You have an end time, you see the end time, and you see the result. Here the result is actually just a plain string, but it could be a JSON statement as well. And also other elements of part of the workflow. Let's see what are and how we are working with some sample workflows. But here we are going to IT automation. So for example, here you can combine automation with a scheduler. So you could have a 9 AM trigger, which does a step like starts a VM on the GCP platform. It waits for 60 seconds. And based on the waiting, it may do other tasks, but if not, it logs the event and notifies the team on the Slack that the machine didn't boot up or the machine is not ready, or it could be a DevOps chat or a sysadmin chat here on the Slack. So essentially, this is just the basic stuff that you use as a cloud scheduler to start the workflow and you execute multiple steps. Also, you could be a developer task, like receiving an order is a task that the application does. So, your application will trigger the workflow. The workflow is 1, 2, 3, create an invoice, generate PDF, send PDF via email. These are just the steps. And the underlying services which do the underlying steps, it could be, for example, creating an invoice could be a micro app engine, let's say mini application, generating the PDF. Could be another product like Cloud Run, it could be even different language, sending the PDF via email, it could be the same service where you generated the PDF using together with SendGrid as well. So these are just the basic examples to actually connect some workflow engines, but there could be a really much and really complex examples as well. Let's see code examples, but I will switch to the editor as well. So let's see here, where is the workflow example project? And let me show you here the example of clear. Good. So we are in VS Code, and here we have a YAML file describing a workflow which does 2 steps. Essentially what you see here is that this is the name of a step, this is the name of a step. The syntax could be HTTP post, could be HTTP get, and here you have a lot of options, also connectors as well, where you write it. For example, right now we are using and demoing an external service. We have here the Bitly API, we have the headers where we need to add our API key, and what we are going to shorten. This works out easily, for example, because I put my API key in line here, and I could use the service to actually shorten my URLs. Let's see how this works. Now, for that, we need to see if we are on the right project. I'm using the GCP project switcher extension. Essentially here, I can change the project, the GCP project that I'm working with. GCP switcher project is an extension that I've installed. Actually, this is my extension, so I created this extension. It works for VS Code. It adds in the status bar the name of the current project that we are working on, and you can actually switch to different projects as well. You should try it out. It's called GCP Project Switcher. So this is actually an amazing way to actually add your project to the interface. If I switch to the GCP platform, here in the menu you could find out workflows, as essentially when you go to the workflows, yours empty, but mine already has some examples, and you can create a workflow from the UI as well, because it's very versatile. You just set a name for the workflow. You get a boilerplate code as well. You get a visual of the code as well, and you can actually work out from these examples as well. But I'm going to demo and show you how we are deploying in the code base. So essentially, to run a deploy, I need to run a deploy command. VS Code lets you to define quick run actions here, and I love those. How I define it is that in the VS Code folder, I can place tasks JSON file. You can look it up. These are command lines, and you can have here all the command lines which you want to use. So I need to use, for example, the gcloud beta workflow deploy. So whenever I'm on not this file, the Bitly file. This Bitly file, I can use the deploy service. I'm clicking now, and what it does is that it runs this command, http beta workflow deploy. Essentially, this already completed. Also, I've set up some other actions like executing the workflow, describing the last execution. So essentially, I can quickly work on those. If I execute the workflow, now the workflow is being executed. Essentially, it will return you just a command that created. So it created the workflow. If I need to describe the command, I can take out this command from here and run it on the terminal, and it will describe the workflow which I created based on the execution ID, which is part of it. But also there is a describe last command, and the describe last command is much more easier for a developer because it's just gcloud beta workflow execution describe last, and it returns the rest execution of a service. Now what we see here is that the workflow succeeded, And here we see the short link that was created based on our long link, on the long URL as well. Now, this is just a basic example. Let me show you some other example. Let's use Wikipedia to search about something. So what we have here is HTTP GET. We put the Wikipedia API call. We put the action open source, that's from manual, and we are searching for keyword Tesla. Now, I created a run command. The run command runs all the three operations here, so deploying, executing, describing last as well. So when I do click on this, I'm seeing deploying the project. It's 1-2 seconds. Then it's executing, which is instant, and then it's describing the workflow result. And I'm seeing here the output of that search. I could add here also another search, like, for example, München or something recently. I save the file and I'm deploying again using the gcloud workflows deploy command, executing, and now we see here the executions as well. And here I have München outputs return. What happened in the background? So essentially, the workflow was deployed here on the Cloud Workflow platform under the name of the file, like HTTP GET. HTTP GET is defined here. This is the executions from today, November 27. And I can edit, for example, this workflow. This is the name, and on the second screen, this is the code. The code essentially reading Wikipedia and returning a result, so only 2 steps. Good. These were the basic examples, but there are additional examples that I want to demo it. Let's see on the slides what are some examples put on the slides as well. So I already demoed the HTTP post statement, so this is very easy. You have here the token that you need to use if you authenticate against an API, but we will see that this is not safe because the token is part of your code. There are much more modern ways using Secret Manager for those. Then, if you want to sequence 2 steps, you can do an execute statement, for example, using the get statement and write into this variable. The result is written to this variable. On the next step, you may execute another HTTP GET statement. And from that variable, current time, you could access the body. This is like a JSON notation. Body and day of the week. Day of the week is a JSON key that was returned by the first step. And you have the result, which is returning the previous variable, wiki result, and body, and the first element from the body. You have sub-workflow capability. So you can have defined, for example, a function or a sub-workflow where you have parameters. This is the body of the workflow, the sub-workflow. And then you can call the sub-workflow by issuing the name of the workflow in the call statement, and args are replacing the parameters. So essentially, you can have here first name, last name, which are passed to the sub-workflow name, and you can easily reuse all your workflows. You can find sub-workflows on the internet. You can find recipes about it. You can copy paste other solutions from Stack Overflow or from Medium articles, from tutorials, and you just put together your main workflow for all the automation that you want to build. Now, I'm going to actually to show you one more awesome feature here. Hopefully, there will be time to run another demo. Let's see. So what's new in workflows? Essentially, we have function string, functions. Functions mean that you are able to run string operation, JSON, run map, statements, iterating syntax as well. So essentially it means that we can do a lot more complex algorithm into the workflow as well. These are specific syntaxes that we look up in the manual and use in the workflow definition as well. It enables cloud logging and call logging as well. So cloud logging is developer logs, and call logging, it means that who called the steps and what are the step execution is automatically fed to the log service built in. So you don't need to actually do that yourself. There are connectors, built-in authentication, retries, and long operation. These are extremely good features. We will see what connectors are. Then there are callbacks, which enables async executions or human in the loop, as I already mentioned for you. You are able to set up a listener for it. Then there is trigger workflows using Event Arc. Event Arc is an observer system in the GCP platform. And essentially, for example, if you drop a file on a Google Cloud Storage, it can observe and it can react to it. So it can emit events. And the workflow can start based on those events. Event Arc is a great service to connect an observer to an application, to a task. It's a great way. Now, I put here a screen with string functions. These are basic functions, but more are in the manual as well. Essentially, you can run all kind of operations, like I have here a split running on the comma keyword. This generates an array. I have a find or regex, where I have a regular expression to extract some date format from there. For example, I can use these results further in my workflow, for example, to loop on it and do tasks on these. So these are extremely helpful things. Now, what are workflow connectors? And this is an awesome feature. Workflow connectors are for the GCP platform, and essentially they are like client libraries for other services, handling out, retries, and waiting. Connect to other Google Cloud APIs and integrate other GCP products. But this is not a client library. It's actually a line here which describes the product and the API and the action on that product what you want to run. So essentially, you can look up all the APIs for other Google Cloud products, and instead of implementing their HTTP call, you can use the dot notation to call those APIs. It's an awesome feature, and it reduces code, and it works awesome. You can have arguments to add it. You can even have timeout customization, max delay as well. So let's demo what these are. So I'm going to switch back to my VS Code, because here we have an example of the bit.ly shortener service, which I already mentioned before. Now let's see what are the next steps as well. So next step, for example, is to build out, let me collapse things and zoom in more. So essentially, I created another example here where I have in the first step a variable assignment, and this variable defines the secret manager key, which is going to be used to authenticate with the service. Next, I need to get the secret in a, let's say, old-fashioned way, and without using connectors. I need to issue a get statement. I need to add an out statement, and I need to build out all the path to the API to get the secret. And this is the variable which I'm actually running it. And all the sys and get environment, Google Cloud project number, and so on. Then the result is a base64 payload, and I need to decode it. The decoded API key is placed into this variable, and then the service to bit.ly with HTTP post, essentially it uses a variable instead of hard coding the API key. And it works the same way. Now, this is a 27 line of code. So essentially, let's put this here. So essentially, this is how you want to connect Secret Manager with an external service. But there is also an easier way to do that, using connectors. Now, I'm showing you an example with a connector. The connector, to get the secret, is resumed and it's being done in 5 lines of code. So essentially we have the name for the Google API, Secret Manager, projects, secrets, versions, access string. So this is the API call that I found in the manual. In the workflow manual, you have all these strings, what you need to put here in the workflow manual. And I place the bit.ly API key label to get my secret. And it's being put into this variable. And then I can run all my business with the link shortener as well. So connectors open the way up to actually do much more easier operation. Also, there are connectors, for example, on the storage API, or BigQuery. So here I'm showing you a sub workflow for BigQuery. You have the call statement to do a query, and then you can have here a query parameter, which actually gets fed from the external services as well. Also, there are connectors, for example, for workflow itself. There are other examples like listing workflows. I don't need to place a HTTP GET statement. I can use the connector services as well. So, I will showcase this example live. So let's see what are next on my presentation. We have built-in authentication. So all the authentication that's going to other products are from the service account, which invoked the cloud workflow, which started the workflow. If that service account has access to BigQuery, to cloud storage, all the workflow works out essentially. You can customize retries, you can customize timeout. Essentially, the default is 30 minutes, but can be increased to 1 year. And this is indeed a timeout, so it can wait for a callback, for example, to 1 year to happen. And that's an awesome feature. You can have a callback happening months later. So that's an interesting use case if you have such products for that. And some running operation and polling as well. Now, this is a table showing what kind of products there are added to the connectors. So you can have a BigQuery, Cloud Build, Functions, Cloud SQL, Compute Engine, Dataflow, Firestore, Document AI, Cloud Spanner workflows as well. But I think that this table needs to be updated with recent additions. I just put here just as a reference how this is working out and how is essentially the basic operations that you can run with connectors right now. Callbacks is the final thing that I want to show you. Callbacks are a webhook endpoints where you signal that external event has occurred. So it's like a gateway that's waiting for a callback from the outside. Callback allow executions to wait until the endpoint gets a call. So that's an extremely useful feature because the workflow actually pauses. Essentially, you have two segments of the code. You create a callback. The syntax is events create callback endpoint. Here you have the HTTP method. You need to add get post, whatever you want to use it. And the callback details holds the URL where the callback needs to happen, needs to actually ping the callback. Then in some other section of your workflow, you have the await callback. And this await callback is waiting with the callback details, which are here, the previous variable, and it will continue when the callback details happen. So it means that it pauses the execution of the workflow until the event, the signal happens on the callback as well. Callbacks are a modern way to avoid sleep, wait, or tracking tables, hash or variables or polling that often developers try to develop or work out when they need to wait for a service. It offers a webhook endpoint and it's built-in authentication, so nobody who doesn't have the key can signal something there. The external service based on the key can signal services for that. It has timeout, as I mentioned previously, up to 1 year. It's event-based, so it pauses the workflow execution until the call is received on endpoint. So essentially, it doesn't use resources. You don't need to keep a server for it because this is all serverless and a managed platform as well. And the full callback details you have available, like headers, query, body, route, JSON as well. So you can add additional information to the header parameter as well. Now, the final step is to show you some advanced examples, but these are individual stories. Each need 1 hour to actually fulfill. So these are articles created by me, and these are available on Medium as well. And there is no paywall, so you can read it out. Essentially, this example runs a Firestore backup using Cloud Workflow. So on a Cloud Scheduler, let's say every day, it will start a Cloud Workflow, and the Cloud Workflow will execute a Cloud Firestore backup operation. The backup operation will be placed on the cloud storage. Here you need to set up the permission for the workflow to have access to Firebase, to have access to Firestore, to have access to cloud storage. The article is on Medium. You can find it out under martincode.medium.com. Another advanced example, to use Cloud Workflow to load cloud storage files to BigQuery. Essentially, when you start with Cloud Workflows, the workflow starts. It could be based on an event, like event arc integration, or manual, or application-based. It reads out what files are in the cloud storage, or it gets, based on the event, what files are there. It could do a for each if there are many files, and it can place into BigQuery. There is also a way to actually get out from the file section using the string functions, using segments like index and year in order to create customized tables inside BigQuery. Also, this is an article that you can check it out on Medium as well. And the most complex one is running arbitrary custom shell commands on Compute Engine VMs in a fully serverless way without actually cleaning up or doing anything wrong. So essentially, this is a complex example. Essentially, this starts the VM, because in our situation, the VM could be stopped. It starts the VM, it will submit a cloud build job, and it will stop the VM. So essentially, it could do one-time operation using fully serverless, and you have the VM only started for that action. How does it work? When it starts, it has an authorized fail. You have the service account with all the permissions added to do Compute Engine manage operation, to run cloud build task, and to access to the cloud IRP system as well. This is the proxy system. When it starts, it issues an operation to boot up, and it does a wait in order to for the VM to start and to serve operations. Then it submits a Cloud Build job. The Cloud Build job will connect to the compute engine using a proxy. And this is done with identity-aware proxy service, another service, but it's extremely easy to configure it. Then it will execute the shell command once it connected to the compute engine service. Again, this example is on Martin Kodok and it's fully available for you. Conclusions. And if you have any questions, please post on the chat so I can answer it, or you can find me on the Twitter as well. So, benefits of Cloud Workflow. Reliable workflow execution. Low latency of execution. No cold starts. You have seen in my demo that whenever I deployed something, immediately deployed. It immediately started and provided results. It has built-in error handling, out-of-the-box configurable with retry policies, so you can actually customize those. All the dot notation syntax in the YAML is built-in JSON parsing, so it's very handful and you don't need to mess with any JSON libraries as well. It has a rich runtime. You can iterate through an array, embedded steps or sub-workflows for readability, so you can build out complex examples as well. It has secret manager integration, as I already showed you. That's a good way to actually not have any secrets in the code itself, and you keep in the secret manager definition with your API keys, your passwords, your access elements as well. It has callbacks feature, which opens solutions for async or human-in-the-loop orchestration task. You can have the callback wait for up to 1 year, which is a fully amazing service. If we talk about developer-friendly features, it's very easy to build and operate, scales out, does not lose state, it handles errors, out-of-the-box support of Cloud API, it's auditable, so if your manager needs any access to some previous logs, you have in the audit logs as well, and it enables async workloads, so you can combine with other applications as well. The possibilities are endless. You can have event-driven marketing workflow automation to, workflow-based maintenance needs, digitalization of internal policies, automating the cloud, shell script replacement, orchestrate DevOps workflows. Amazing jobs can be done. Anything which can be called from a HTTP statement can be executed. Thank you for having me here and watching this presentation. Slides are available on slideshare.net under Martin Kodok. And essentially, you can contact me on Twitter as well, for example, under Martin Kodok. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. And this way, I will be able to actually connect and show you a lot more services for it.
Okay, great presentation, Martin. And so I consider myself as one of those lazy programmers. So this is actually a lifesaver for me. All right, so before you go, I have a really quick question. So you see, most of the web apps, when you send multiple HTTP requests to them, they sort of break, right? So my question is, how will the Cloud Workflow balance these problems without making my app crash, right?
Yeah, interesting question. So whenever you build out something, you know your system capabilities. So you need to build out the solution in a way that it helps you in a way. So start small and then you grow up as well. And here the scaling capability of the workflow service is indefinite. So if you have a very high traffic website or very high traffic service, the workflow will actually do all the operations. Your application needs to receive it and handle it. So it can create a lot of information for you and a lot of requests as well. There are the timeout variables, the retry policies, which can help you in case of errors or timeout to back off, to slow down. But essentially, you know what are the limits and you need to build it out. And this is only a problem if you have a high traffic websites. On a small scale solution, it's just a service that it does what's built for, and that's it. So it will just work. We use it for so many things now, like more than 200 things we added in there slowly because it needs time to add it there, but we added later. And it's fully automated. It's YAML. It's not a library that you need to update it. So as you mentioned, for lazy programmers, it's just 10 lines of code, 20 lines of code, which you find on the internet. You put it there and forget it. It just works. It's not a library that you need to update it 2 years later to have a new version. It doesn't run on, let's say, anything that goes obsolete, language and so on. It's YAML syntax, and it's great for automation.
Okay, that was very helpful. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you next person. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, everyone.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
take over, Alfred.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Thank you very much, Martin, also. Well, it has been an interesting day. Everybody, I guess, everybody is tired a bit, but we got one last interesting speaker available for us, which is going to be interesting. So for the meantime, we'll go on a short break. We'll go on a short Twitter break. So we'll also be posting the link to the giveaway form. Make sure you fill it to be eligible for the giveaway prizes. We have some interesting prizes for you all. Make sure you go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtags DevFest Ghana, DevFest Ghana, DevFest 2021, DevFest SSA. You can use all those hashtags and tweet to us. Share what you've been learning so far, and we'd love to hear from you. And also, don't forget to fill the form. We have a lot in stock for you. Okay, Debbie, please, would you like to say something?
Let's just go for the break.
Okay, great.
We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community. We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community.
Okay, great. I hope everyone enjoyed the break. I hope you filled the giveaway form and also you tweeted about what you've learned in the event so far. Excellent. I would like to introduce the CEO of Siabit, one of the payment gateway providers in Africa. They started in Nigeria. They're currently in Ghana. I'd like to invite him so that he talk a bit about Siabit, what they do, and how they intend to achieve. Okay. Great. Take it over.
Thank you so much, Sosu, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Good day, everyone. And thanks for having us on your DevFest Ghana 2021. My name is Nei Kolade. I'm the founder and CEO of Siabit. I just want to say a quick summary about Siabit. Siabit is a Pan-African enterprise payment platform developed for both offline and online businesses and other marketplace companies to address one common need, which is the friction and fragmentations we have in payments landscape in Africa today. To put this in a simple term, we're in the business of helping other business merchants on the continent to get paid in the most seamless, inclusive, and secure way possible. Our mission is to build a robust payment solution that addresses fragmentation and frictions of payment in Africa. How are we helping today? At Siabit, we have tailored our payments solution to specific businesses so we can reach every single customer and expand to new markets for few merchants across few verticals. Today, we're currently in 8 African countries. We're expanding to 6 more countries by the first quarter in 2022. Today, one of our key catch is to attract more customers by letting them pay their way whenever they need to. Siabit offer all types of payments, local payment methods across those African regions we play in today. We've been able to build arrays of solutions, digital payment solutions for offline customers, down to pay with cash, to POS in a store, and also taking it directly back to the online payments where we have different payment methods from cards to bank accounts to mobile money and so on. And also, we also partner with global brands to be able to process payment locally in Africa. And we're doing that effectively. Siabit have we have different and flexible payment options, just like I mentioned. But these options are now varies to different capabilities they address in the marketplace. We have solutions around where we look at different verticals and based on what the business expects or what the business needs. We have invoicing solutions. We have payment link on our platforms. We have recurrent solutions. We have billing platform on our solutions. And also we have spread varieties of payment methods. Our singular focus is we don't want any customer to be differentiated at any time. We also make it feel safe for you because we are PCI DSS certified. We have a robust fraud protection tools, and we have a powerful risk management analysis on our platform. Our payment gateway is currently being used by over 5,000 merchants across 8 African countries today. And we are proud to be contributing our quota to the success of local and international business who are making impact in Africa today by addressing the frictions and scaling businesses in Africa. We provide our service for various sectors like food sectors, transportation, streaming business, e-commerce business, m-commerce business, retail, embassies, airline, government, and so on and so forth. We have few merchants, our clients on our gateway today, from British Council to United Nations, to AutoCheck, and to some food businesses that varies in the market. Now, we at Siabit, like most of you entrepreneurs and developers, requires relevant information necessary to make better payment business decisions. And those questions is what I would throw to to the team of developers right here on DevFest is how do you make payments? How do you use payment to scale your business? How do you intelligently test a startup idea on the market rapidly with the most effective payment platform of your choice? How do you find the right payment types that meets the payment methods that you may need? I think these are the questions we would like to throw back, and these are the questions Cebit addresses. Cebit tries to address your payment need, address how you look at payment methods to fit into different verticals and different needs in the marketplace. I would like to thank everyone giving us this opportunity to share about Cebit and to be able to talk about Cebit. I hope you're able to go to www.cebit.com/developer to check our tools, our APIs, our capability, and what we have built for the marketplace. And also, we've actually looked at building for different class of stacks to make it easy, for ease of integrations in the marketplace. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope everyone enjoyed their DevFest 2021. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for sharing what Cebit is about to us. We look forward to engaging with it also. I mean, thank you for sponsoring this event also.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go ahead to our next and final speaker of this evening. It's going to be an interesting session, a very awesome session indeed. It's going to be about Flutter and how to persist data in Flutter. Samuel, would you like to introduce our speaker?
Build online apps. We just integrate our app with Firebase or other online databases to manage our data. It loads up the data into our application while launching it only when we have an internet connection enabled. So what if we need to build offline apps which should show up data even when there's no internet connection available or after you exit the app while filling up a form? So for this reason, we invited Kendi J, a Flutter developer at Bridge. She loves tech communities and besides tech, live theater. She will show us how to save data locally in Flutter. Hi, Kendi, and welcome to DevFest.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak at GDG Accra. I'm really honored to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I know about saving data locally, and let's learn together. Okay? Cool. So let me try to share my screen. Okay. I hope it's visible. So yeah, as I have been introduced, my name is Kendi J. I work at Bridge. Bridge is an amazing company where we are building an application that brings you people together and helps you send money to.
Excuse me, Kendi. Sorry, please, your screen is not visible yet.
Oh, it's not visible?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh, so sorry. Is it now?
Oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you. It is live. Thank you.
All right, good. So that's my bubbly face. Yeah. So Bridge is a company where we are building this application that will help you send money to each other and also swap currencies and cool stuff that are coming. You can check it on Google Play Store. It's called Bridge, and also Apple Store. So to the topic that brings us all here, data persistent in Flutter. So you may ask, what is this data persistent? We all have data persistent in several places and in different programming languages, but what is it exactly? So data persistent, if I could give an example, is where, let's say for example, I was chatting with one of you, and then I exit my WhatsApp application, and then when I come back, I find that the chat that I was talking to is still there. So basically, that is what data persistent is. And why do we need to persist data? Okay, so we have this another interesting example where, let's say for example, you are typing something on a Google form, on a form rather, and then it requires you to enter a code, and then you don't have that code, so you have to exit that particular app, go to where the code has been sent. Let's say for example it's been sent to your SMS, so you have to like check the code, and then you come back to your application. You see, you don't want users to like start the whole process again so that you can get a code, so that you put it on and stuff. You need to let the users go copy the code and then come to your application to where they're supposed to put that particular code, and then they just paste it there and continue with what they wanted to do. So we need to persist data so that users can have an interesting time interacting with your application, and also so that they don't get bored. And yeah, so we have really different ways of persisting data, and I'm going to like touch on 4 major that I find very interesting to speak about. Number 1, we have shared preference. So shared preference is used to persist small amount of primitive data, and and then it persists it on a file in your device. So the kind of data is, let's say for example, I know most people, or rather most developers, like dark mode. So let's say you've changed your application from bright to dark mode. So you don't want like to have that much brightness stuff. So whenever you exit your application and then you decide to come back, you automatically expect to find that. So this is where shared preference comes in. And also you don't have to like store very secure data or stuff, so it's not secure at all. Okay, and then we have secure storage. So this kind of persistence is used to store very secure values, for example your local pin and stuff. So you don't want people to like access your data, and you want to store it still. Like for example, when you put your password and you say remember me, obviously you don't want people to know what your password is. However, you need to store it so that the next time you're entering this application, it's easy for you to use the application automatically. And then we have this SQLite. So the SQLite is mostly for storing bigger stuff. It's a bigger storage mechanism. It uses the SQLite package to connect to the SQL database. Another interesting bit about this is, let's say you're working on this big application and you're inputting your data while offline, and then you need this data to sync when you get back online. So SQLite really brings the magic, and yeah, that's why we need it. And also when you're working on a very large file. And then we have another one, which is Hive. So Hive is a NoSQL database, and it is used to store data as key and value. Also, by this, what I mean is, when you want to work with this, you have to create a box so that you can read and write the data into that particular box. And also, it supports all sort of primitive data like lists, maps, datetime, and unit lists. And then, like I said, when storing data, you have to specify a key and value. Okay. And another thing with Hive, it's very similar to shared preference. However, this one is also for storing large amount of data. So today I'm going to like take you through secure storage, and I've prepared a small demo that I would like to show you guys. So let's log into my VS Code. first of all, what you need to do is you need to import this package, the secure storage package, so that you're able to work with it and you're able to see how it works. And for this particular project, I have this application that I was already running, and already we've pushed our buttons to 10. So I'll show you like how to go about it. All right, so back to our code. So after installing your package, what I did next is I wrote a class for this secure storage, and what I wanted to do is I would like to get to save the value first, and then to get the stored value. Also, if you wish to delete a particular value, then you have to like write a method for it. And yeah, so how do I go about this secured storage, and how do I make it, how do I see what I'm able to achieve with it? So the first thing that you do is you write a function to access the saved value. So here is where I wrote my function. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this is where I wrote my function to get the saved value, and as well as retrieving it. So what exactly would I want? I would want first, once I click on that button, it's able to save the value, and it's also able to retrieve it, because ideally this is what I want to see after I've run the application. I want to like see where the application has been saved and everything, and when I exit the application, I'm also able to like come back and find that the data that I was working on has been persisted. So you write this function that it's able to save your value first, and like I said, you're writing it in the form of key and value. So here is my key, the number of counts, and the value, and I'm passing it to string. All right, and then after that, I need to retrieve this counter, and this is how I'm writing my function rather, to retrieve the counter. And then after that, I need to create the void, the init state. So in this init state, it helps me to rebuild the application. Every time I exit the app and then I come back, I'm able to like retrieve from where I left. Okay, and after that, I need to get or rather to call this increment counter, and this is where I call it at. You see, like I have an unpressed value, and I have already initiated everything, and then I need to call it here on the on press, such that once I click the button, it's able to increment at the same time, and then after incrementing, it's able to save the counter. So if we can reload this and see it on the live application. So okay, I'm not able to access my mouse on the app. Okay, how do you see your mouse on the app? It's disappearing. Oh, it's back. So as you can see, I'm able to increment the application. So for example, I've come here to 16, and when I exit this application, I expect to find that my application is still at 16, the number of times that I've clicked my application. So when I come back here, so an interesting thing about Flutter is when you're exiting your application, you just you just restart your app. Ideally, when you restart your app, it starts all over. So when I restart my application, shows that I've already restarted it. So I'm expecting to find myself at 16. And you see now, this is the beauty of persisting this data. You exit your application, and then when you come back, you find your application still at the same state that you left it at. And we really need this because this is literally an important thing. Well, depending on the kind of application that you're working on, I feel like this is an important thing to practice so that you give your users an interactive way and an easy way to continue with interacting with your app from where they left it at. Well, other than that, that was like a very simple talk for today, and I'll be open for any sort of questions.
Okay, thank you so much for this great presentation. So before you go, I have a quick question. So can this process be used to save a user from always logging in when they come back to the app? You see, sometimes when you open an app, you'll have to go back again and log in before you continue. Can this also be used?
Yeah, this can also be used. For example, you see there's some application when you're logging in, you say remember me. So on that remember me activity is where you set your states, is where you call your state and tell it the next time the user, if a user presses the remember me button, then let them get saved. However, if they don't, then every time you log in, then you have to key in your credentials.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So thank you so much for joining us, Candy, and we hope to see you next year in person. Bye-bye.
All right, cool. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, Candy, are
Yes.
you off? Okay, great, great, great. I really enjoyed your talk. I didn't know there's anything called secure storage. All I know about was shared preferences. Uh, I, for one, I wish you could have gone in a deep about the Hive. I was really interested in that since I've not explored that option a bit. So I'll be glad if you could go a bit about the Hive for me. Thank you.
Okay. So on the Hive is for people who use the NoSQL databases. Um, and it's basically used to store large amount of data. And how you go about this is, first of all, you need to create a box. How the database works. You have to create a box where you are able to read and write the data into that particular box. And this thing, it stores the data as key and value. I would want to dig deeper into this, maybe some other time when we have more time, so I can show you how to go about the NoSQL databases in Flutter using Hive specifically.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. I'll go deep further into the secure storage and explore the Hive also. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining
Cool.
us.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, so that was our last speaker for today's event. I'm sure most of you are feeling tired, but thank you very much for taking your evening to join us once again. We really love and appreciate you making the time to join us. Please don't forget to fill your giveaway forms. Please don't forget to fill your giveaway forms, and also tweet about what you've learned so far from the event. We really appreciate and would love to hear more about you. Samuel, would you like to give any feedback?
Oh yeah, sure. So this has been a really interesting event, right? So I learned a lot of things from cloud workflows to Flutter animations. And then we had Kendi also talk to us about data persistence. So I think I've really learned a lot. And there's like a stepstone to learning a lot more. And so I enjoyed it really well.
Thank you very much for sharing with us also, Samuel. It is an interesting event. I've learned so much more from animations in Flutter, which I thought was kind of so difficult to do, but the GGs have been able to break it down for us, and I really do appreciate that also. Kodeshedi, where is he? Would you like to say something? Or Kendi, would you like to share something with us? We didn't see your face. So I'd like to add you to the script to share something with us.
Well, I'm super honored to be here with you all, and it was really amazing speaking to all of you. Oh, I would like guys to like check out the application that we've worked on. It's really written, all of it is written in Flutter. It's called Bridge. So with Bridge, we are able to like share currencies. Like I can send you money in Ghana from Kenya through wallets, and you can also buy a lot of things through it as well. And it's quite an interesting application. Go check it out, give us comments, and yeah, tell us what we've done about it. It's available on Google Play Store and Apple Play Store, and Apple Store, sorry.
Okay, sure. Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that with us, Kendi. Really appreciate that also. So that's it, guys, for today. DevFest Ghana 2021 has come to an end. We really appreciate all our speakers. I really appreciate you that have taken the time from your Saturday to join us today. Really appreciate that also. Please remember to join us on GDG Ghana, the platform. We share this link. The link has been shared in the comment section. So please join the community so that when we create events, you can easily get notified of the event. Really appreciate that. And also, please don't forget to join us on Twitter also. We really share some fancy, information about events on the platform. Twitter is one of the spaces that we interact with our community. If you have any question, feel free to reach out to us. We are delighted to help and assist you. Samuel, yeah, you can unmute your mic and if you have something for the community.
Yeah, I think that will be all for today, and I really hope you have a good day. So see you guys next year, and then the subsequent meetings. And I hope we meet in person next year too.
Definitely. We'll make that happen by thunder or fire. We pray God helps us so that, and we don't want another COVID situation. So
absolutely.
If all things being equal, we hope to meet physically next year and to be engaging. Everybody get pizza. Don't worry. It's fine. Okay.
We've already started to see the difference we can make by working together as a community.